Joan Marie Galat is an award-winning author of a whopping 20 books, well, more than 20 books. And that includes being a Canadian national bestseller. But on top of that, she's had her books translated into 6 languages. And today we're going to focus on 3 of her books. So don't go away. We will be right back. If you're just joining us, a hearty warm welcome to the Writers' Corner live show. I'm your host, Bridgetti Limbanda from Cape Town in South Africa. And the stream is made possible by StreamYard, Creative Edge, and BeLive Media. A special warm welcome wherever you're watching us. If you're watching us on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and if you're watching us on Amazon, please unmute, because if you don't unmute, you're not going to hear us and you're not going to hear more about our amazing author today. So a warm welcome. If you're watching us on Amazon Live, do say hello. I am actually monitoring the comments. So wherever you're watching, say hello, let me know where you're watching from. And more importantly, if you want to talk to our amazing author today, Joan Marie Galat, then please feel free to post some questions, comments. We'd love to see them, and we'll try and answer all your questions. But before we bring on Joan, I want to say a hearty warm welcome to my friend and co-host, Mary Elizabeth Jackson. She is a special needs and disabilities advocate, and she's also an award-winning author of the Children's Poolicious book series. She writes her books with phrases that empowers little people, and I love that about her books. She also writes for the special needs community, and she's in Nashville in the USA. So do let us know in the comments where you are joining us from. It'd be fantastic to know. So with that, let me give a hearty warm welcome to Mary. Mary, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for that entrance. I'm so grateful for it. And it's so nice to see you. And you're getting colder. We're trying to get warmer here where we are. And it's so fun. We're across the world from each other. And we get to do this show together. We're just so excited to be here today. And I'm excited to have our author because, of course, you know, one of my favorite genres is children. So I can't wait to talk to her and find out about, you know, what inspired her to go into this genre, because there's so many different genres to choose from. So usually people are drawn to write in certain genres because of, you know, something that's happened in their life, a love for it, or, you know, just a whim sometimes, because we've met authors who kind of fell into writing. It was never an intention, right?
Yeah. Well, you know why I'm so keen to talk to Joan today is that she's made National Geographic.
I know.
To me, that's just like a wow. Oh my gosh, how do you get onto National Geographic? I mean, that is huge. That's absolutely huge. And I love the title of her book.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I was thinking about this for you and I don't know about you, but growing up in my house and in my grandparents' house were all the stacks of the National Geographic magazines. So, you know, my kids have not really seen them that much. I don't know about your children. I mean, they are at the library and we watch the show on television, you know, because it has its own, you know, it has its own series and app. And so it's always got a lot of really cool stuff about the planet and information that's just wonderful. So yeah, I'm excited to talk to her about that as well.
I know. So she writes a lot about different topics, educational stuff, light pollution, nature, mythology, interesting people. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. And so the first book that we're going to focus on today is Solve This: Wild and Wacky Challenges for the Genius Engineer in You. The second book is Dark Matters, Nature's Reaction to Light Pollution. And the third book we're going to focus on today is Dot to Dot in the Sky, Stories of the Aurora. So shall we invite Joan to come and join us on screen?
Yeah, let's do.
Joan, welcome to the show. It's magical having you join us today. We feel totally honored to have an author like you on the show and to tell us about your work. Welcome to the Writers' Corner live show.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you so much for hosting me. Thank you so much.
You just feel like the most special woman, and you feel like the most special woman in the whole world.
I'm having fun already. This is great. Thank you.
Joan, so I want to jump right in because I've got in my mind, I've got 100 questions for you. So tell us a little bit just to get us all started. And again, I want to just remind our audience on Amazon, please unmute so that you can hear us, and also click on follow, because we interview the most amazing authors like Joan. So unmute and follow so that you can get a notification when we go live again on Amazon. So tell us a little bit about your journey into being an author in a very niche market, and who's been, because no author just becomes a great author without any support. We need support. And who's been your biggest critic? Because I think that's kind of a really important component to keep us grounded as an author and to help propelling us to the next level.
Well, that's a great way to begin. Thank you so much for inviting me to share my story. I became interested in books at a very young age. And I know when I was about 9 years old, I started making my own books. I started writing poems and stories, and I think riddles, and drawing pictures and stapling pages together and coloring pictures. But I did not get published. I did not get paid for my work until I was 12 years old. And when I was 12 years old, I know, what a delay there was. I hung in there.
I'm so glad you did.
I entered a writing contest when I was 12. I was lucky that when I was growing up, the daily newspaper, the Edmonton Journal, had one page just dedicated for children. Every Tuesday, I would read this page, and you could get pen pals, and you could enter writing contests and take part in different activities. And I got pen pals, which I thought was just a great way, like looking back, that was a great thing to build my writing skills, because when I was writing to my pen pals, I was trying to be interesting. I was trying to be entertaining. I was trying to get them to write back. So I think I was learning some persuasive writing skills. And when I entered the contest, I wrote a poem, I mailed it in. I did not win the contest, but something good still happened. I got a letter from the editor of the Sherwood Park newspaper, and I have a prop for this part. So I got this letter, and it said, "Dear Joan, I live in Sherwood Park, or you live in Sherwood Park, and I see you're a writer. Would you like to write for a newspaper? We'll pay you for it." So
wow,
that's so funny.
I had the giant pencil. So I thought, well, this is great. My job before this had been to deliver the paper. Now I had a job writing for the paper. I thought this was a great promotion, but I had a huge idea, or I had a huge problem, I should say. What was I going to write about? I needed an idea. I wanted to do it. I didn't know where to begin. I didn't know what to write about. And I had heard write about what you know. And I thought, well, I'm 12 years old. I'm in grade 8. What do I know? And I came up with something. I knew my backyard very well. We had a birdhouse in the backyard. And whenever I went near this birdhouse, the birds that were living there, they were small birds, tree swallows, not, and anyway, they would attack me. They'd swoop at my head and dive bomb me and try and scare me away from their nest. And so, I mean, it's not like big hawks or eagles. That would have been a better story if I had exaggerated. But these little birds were after me. So I ended up writing a story about the birds in my backyard. And I got hooked. I liked seeing my name in the paper. I liked the writing. But I still had a problem. It was a weekly paper, and I was going to need an idea every single week. So I had the idea to write a question and answer column. I would ask people to send me questions about birds, since I'd already had some luck in that department. And if I knew the answer, I could look it up. If I didn't know the answer, I had to learn to do some research, look things up, go to the library. And my mom is a very good writer. She's good with grammar. She checked my writing.
Oh, wow. Your mom's a writer as well?
She's not a writer, but she was a good editor. And
Okay.
I have to give her credit. Awesome. She checked everything so that I didn't completely embarrass myself at 12 years old. And and that's how I got started. So I ended up studying biological sciences and ecology because I thought, well, I can write on the side. I think it would have been a more direct route if I'd studied, English literature, but I loved my science as well. So I studied science, and I was lucky to have different jobs where I could write. I became a park naturalist, and so I was writing shows and like for the, to perform in an amphitheater. I was taking people on hikes, but I'd have to prepare my notes. What am I going to say? And that was writing. And then I kind of wormed my way into a radio station. I lived in a small town, and sometimes you get opportunities in small towns that you wouldn't necessarily get in a larger city. So Wonderful. I was actually able to get a job at a radio station. I learned how to write news. I learned how to write commercials. I learned how to write programming and make up contests. It was so fun. In a small town, if I could dream it up, somebody would say, well, go ahead and try. Nobody,
wow.
That was encouragement along the way. And then but I always wanted to write a book. I always did. And I thought I would write young adult or middle grade literature. And the first book I wrote was I would call it a middle grade novel now. And it never got published. But I think you can't get published if you don't start somewhere. You have to write something. Right. And I got what I consider good reject letters. I got maybes, but I never got a yes on that one. But I didn't give up. I kept writing. And my first book that was published was a title in the Dot to Dot in the Sky series. And so that was a book that was partnering science, facts about our universe, but also mythology and legends and folklore, how people explain the night sky before they knew, before they had the science. I partnered those two things. And that's how I took off with writing books.
That was awesome.
That was a long answer to your question.
Thank you for telling us all this background, because you really were set on your path from early on, and you used a lot of genius to get where you are. And so I love that about this title. That's our next question for you, is to tell us a bit about Solve This: Wild and Wacky Challenges for the Genius Engineer in You. And so along with that, we want to know how you got to, go to write for National Geographic. But I love how, you really embraced life and what was in front of you. Even if you were scared, you did it anyways. And you definitely are where you're supposed to be, because boy, those doors just kept opening, didn't they?
I kept going through those doors. When they opened, I was there, definitely.
Yeah. That's awesome. We're so glad. So tell us about that book, and then about National Geographic.
Well, what happened was I continued writing writing nonfiction, and I went to a nonfiction conference for children, a conference for children who wrote. Wait a minute. A conference for writers who wrote nonfiction for children. And I was fortunate there to meet an editor for National Geographic Kids. And I attended her session. I learned what kind of books they're looking for. And I stayed afterwards to talk to her, which, aspiring authors with new publishers often do. But I was fortunate that we hit it off, and I skipped to my next session, and we sat down, and I had an idea on the spot, and I shared it with her. And it was for this book about engineering. So this is a book that explains what engineering is, what the engineering process is. And for kids, like the word engineering, this is like, what is this? What does this mean?
It's a big word.
Yeah. And for adults too. I mean, we know that engineers are people who build bridges and things, but I don't always think that. Before I wrote this book, I thought much beyond that. But engineers are people who solve problems, and they have a process to go through from start to finish. And it's sort of like writing. You have to try things and fail and try again and fix things and revise and look at it from different angles. And so my idea for the book was that what if you had a challenge to solve? Like, what if you had a problem and you could only solve it with what's at hand? For example, what if in normal times your kids were having a sleepover and they wanted to stay up all night long, but they of course don't want you to know about that. How could they use their engineering skills to soundproof their bedroom so they don't get caught? So
That is genius. Why didn't I think of that when my kids were little? That is genius.
It would be nice if they would soundproof their rooms anyway.
Right. Or pad them, right? For like kids like my son who like to just jump on the furniture and throw themselves at things. I always think there should be a padded room for children.
Well, and this book will inspire them to pad their own rooms, so you won't even have to do it. So I have different challenges, and we sent my challenges out to National Geographic explorers, and these are people like archaeologists and biologists and marine biologists and all kinds of people doing interesting jobs. And they took my challenges, and I interviewed them on how they solved the problems. And then we still had some white space in the book, and the editor said, "I think you're going to have to take some of those challenges yourself." And I said, "Me? I create problems. I don't solve them." I was put on the spot. I had to solve some of my own problems. So this book is kind of special to me. It's got the National Geographic explorers in there, and you can see there's like pictures of people who've solved the problems. But I'm in there too, which wasn't the original intent, but definitely satisfying for me in the end.
Fun.
Wow, that is just so amazing. Such an amazing story, and congratulations on your achievement. What can I say? That is wonderful. And of course, it's near and dear to me because my son's an engineer. So I always, I must tell you a very funny story quickly. I always say we knew somehow that my son would become an engineer. The Lion King toys. My son was born just when Lion King was released, and he had the little lion. And he was just a baby. But one day, he started screaming. We couldn't figure out why this kid kept screaming. And my husband figured out one day that it upset him when the lion's paws wasn't 100% flat with the ground. It just had to be like an inch off the ground, and it used to upset him terribly. It had to be like 100% level. And once we figured that out, it became a game. We kind of like thought, do you want to see this kid cry? And we just move it just a smidge, and he would scream.
That is so funny.
Until he got it level. And so of course when he became an engineer, I'm like, I knew it.
Either that or massively OCD. Right?
He was born an engineer.
Everything, everything, and his buildings or what he builds will always be level.
oh yeah, it's like me. I put up a shelf in the house, and I kind of like, I've got a fairly good eye, so I will kind of like guesstimate. Okay, that's straight. No, that's not the way my son will put up a shelf. Everything will be measured down to the T. Anyway, tell us about dark matters, nature's reaction to light pollution.
Okay, yeah, thank you for inviting me to share about this book. I love to look up at the night sky. I love to spend time outdoors. And the reason I write a lot of astronomy books is because when I get excited about something, I want everyone else to get excited about it too. And I'll go so far as to write a book. But sometimes I can't see what I'm looking for in the night sky. Sometimes there's unwanted light, which is light pollution. And the more I learned about it, the more I discovered that this was impacting wildlife. So light is a problem for those of us who want to enjoy the night sky. It's a problem for astronomers and physicists and people who are studying the universe, but it's also a tremendous problem for wildlife. And a new science was named called scotobiology about 20 or so years ago.
Say what?
It's called scotobiology. And
okay, what is that?
It's how light at night impacts humans, plants, and animals.
Oh,
and
okay.
We didn't know about this. It's rare to have a new science. And so when I learned about this and it was a new science, I thought people need to know about this because we're upsetting the ecosystems simply by switching a light on at night. And we don't even know it. So animals at night are impacted by light at night. Animals have evolved for billions of years to be adapted to periods of light and dark. And when they don't get that dark night, things happen that make it hard for them to thrive and survive. And some common examples are...
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I didn't know about it until I started researching it.
But it makes sense, though. It makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. Billions of birds are... I should say millions, many millions of birds are killed every year from hitting lit up high rises, like
Oh
skyscrapers in
no.
cities, like the city of Toronto in Canada and the city of New York, are on migration routes. And we've all seen cities with lights on pouring out of those tall buildings. Nobody's working there at night, and birds are hitting the windows. So many that people have to go in the morning and clean up these dead birds every day. And
That is shocking.
It's terribly
Terrible.
sad. Sea turtles are affected. Pretty well every animal is affected, but scientists are just gradually building up their research on this topic. So, I collected all my facts and I put them in a book and I sent it to a publisher, and the publisher said, this is really interesting and this is important. Sometimes there's a but when you're talking to a publisher.
Yes.
But you're writing for children. I think that you need stories to go with this. And I said, well, what do you mean? Do you want me to sneak my facts into a novel? And they said, no.
You're still trying to get that novel.
I'm still trying. I'll keep trying. I'm looking for that door to open.
Yeah.
He said, why don't you write about your own life, about how you became interested in nature and wildlife and the night sky, and see if we can partner that with the science. So, of course, I had to do this on spec, but I took the chance. And, it was one of the most rewarding things that I've done as a writer was to make a list of stories from my own life based on a theme and tell them, write them, and actually have them published. It's in a sense,
so
it's
cool.
the most strange childhood memoir. Yeah, it's a strange childhood memoir. My story is partnered with light pollution, right? You'll never find anything else like it.
You are one of a kind, Joan, one of a kind.
Thank you.
Hey, I want to ask you a question about these books. So this is not like, because I'm a children's writer as well, but I have to have an illustrator. But where do the pictures come from? Do you find the pictures? Does the publisher find the pictures for somebody else who might want to do this?
The publisher almost always finds the pictures. If I have a useful picture, then I could submit it and it would probably go in if it was the right resolution and everything. I'm not sure that's my talent though. So yeah, I'm usually off the hook for that. Sometimes I'll make suggestions and then they'll find a picture that's available close to something.
That's awesome. Can you tell us about Dot to Dot? And
Absolutely.
I love the Aurora. I hope to someday see it. We look at it and there's things about it, but you get to see when there's movies and videos and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I think it'd be so cool to see it. So what did you hope to achieve with this book? Because each book you have obviously has a purpose.
It does seem that way, doesn't it? Well, I wrote this book because I think when I look up at the night sky, we have the science to explain things, but imagine what it must have been like thousands of years ago. People would have looked up at, suddenly there's an appearance of lights and they would have said, what's going on? What does this mean?
The world is ending.
Yeah. Sometimes they thought that. Some people ran and hid. Other cultures thought it was an omen of something good to happen. It just, depends where you were on the planet. And so it was great fun for me to collect myths and legends and folklore and partner it with the science of what's causing the northern lights. And what I hope is that people recognize that our environment doesn't end at the top of the trees. Our environment extends out into outer space. And this is part of our world. And dark skies and seeing the northern lights or the southern lights is your right. You have the right to see these natural events in our world, but we need the dark nights to see them, definitely. But knowing the stories from long ago connects us to people. Stories connect us to people from thousands and thousands of years ago. What else do we have? We have archaeology and we have some other things, but to know what was in people's minds thousands and thousands of years ago through stories that have survived this long, it feels wonderful to be able to share those stories and collect stories from different cultures. And sometimes people are of these cultures and they can say, I didn't know that. I didn't know that came from my people. And it's very fun to look up and be able to see the northern lights. I live in northern Alberta, so we do have them here. And it's a glorious sight. They're never the same. And I have to say, I saw them more when I was younger and stayed up late. But in the winter, it gets dark about 5 o'clock. So we can see the northern lights quite a bit.
You have to send a picture to Bridgetti and I.
That is
Definitely.
So interesting. How I scrolled through the books that you've written, and you've written so many books. How do you decide on a topic? Is it just sort of something that interests you at that moment? Is it something that you think will be educational for other people? Because very often we find something interesting, and because we do, other people will as well. So is there a way that you sort of decide on things to write about?
I think a lot of my inspiration comes from the natural world when I discover things and I want to share it with other people. But when you look through all my books, you see there's some different titles that maybe don't fit with the rest of my themes. And that's because when I'm writing my own ideas, I'm writing about things in space or ecology or nature or interesting people. But other times, publishers come to me and they say, we'd like an author to write a book on this topic. Will you do it for me? And so then I end up writing some books on topics that are out of my own ideas. You know, they're not my own ideas. And they're still interesting to me. I think as a nonfiction writer, I'm just a very curious person, and I find most things interesting. I'm curious. I want to know why and how, and so I'm able to bring that to my work and hope that kids get excited too. Because I think another thing that inspired me was as a child was the books I read. I had a book on astronomy. I had a book on birds, and it made me curious. It made me more observant when I was outside. Made me pay attention to things. And when I found something that I thought was interesting, I just wanted to tell other people about it.
Well, we're glad you did. Absolutely. We're glad you did. And, you know, you have a specific niche, which is really good, because sometimes authors can write for a while to try to figure out where they fit or what's going to sell, you know, well, or make them an expert in that area. So what advice do you have for anyone watching or any aspiring authors or young authors? You know, because Bridgetti and I have interviewed several young authors. And actually, my daughter this year has become a published illustrator at 17. So I think it's really awesome for kids to start out early, you know, and it's just, the doors are wide open, aren't they?
They
so
are.
Yeah.
Well, that's so exciting for your daughter. Congratulations to you both.
Thank you. We're excited.
I wonder who her inspiration is, Mom.
She's been drawing since she could hold a pencil.
Well, someone put that pencil in her hand.
I'm good at stick figures, so.
Well, I think the best advice is to be a reader. You know, I thought I would write novels because I love stories so much, as well as the nonfiction. But when I actually buy books, I'm always drawn to the nonfiction section. Those are the ones I'm buying and putting on my shelf. And I read a lot of fiction as well, but I'm borrowing those from the library more often. And I think you have to read a lot, because reading teaches you how words work, how paragraphs work, how stories work. And a great trick for editing yourself is simply to read out loud. After you've written something and you think, I'm done, go back to the beginning and make it better. And when you think, I'm done, go back to the beginning and make it better. And you have to keep doing that. And I think that's part of the joy of it, though, is every time you see how it improves, you feel good about that. And if it wasn't a bit of a struggle, perhaps it wouldn't be so rewarding. You know, if you could just whip off that perfect book, then maybe it wouldn't be so exciting. But it does take a lot of rewriting and revising, and you have to accept that as part of the journey. You can't write well until you write rough.
Yeah, it's a birthing
and so process. You have to forgive yourself in a way. You have to forgive yourself for those poor sentences, but you can't write a good one until you start somewhere. You have to forgive yourself for not being perfect first try.
I really like that, you know, and a friend of mine, a live streamer who's actually from Canada as well, he always says, you know, you can't write a book unless you start with chapter 1. You know? you gotta have a chapter 1. So, you know, wherever it is you are at, just get started, you know, get going. And so I really love that. Joan, it was amazing talking to you. I could talk to you for hours. I mean, there's just so many questions I still have. And so we'd love to have you back on the show again. We absolutely would love to have you back.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun for me, and I certainly enjoyed talking to both of you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we've had a blast. Thank you, Joan, so much for sharing your books and your knowledge and just your journey. Oh, so awesome. Love it. I got to get your books for my son.
Oh, thank you so much.
Well, thanks very much, everyone who's joined us live on the show. It was awesome having you join us today. Remember to write good stuff and be inspired one conversation at a time. You are watching the Writer's Corner live show with myself, Bridgetti Limbanda, and my co-host, Mary Elizabeth Jackson. And our special guest for today was Joan Galat. Thanks, everyone. Take care. And until next week, we'll see you back again.